Yeah, so when we look at the psychedelic experience, what we see and what we see in research, but also from a lot of trip reports, that there is a strong change in the quality of consciousness. It changes our perception of the reality surrounding us, but also of the perception of ourselves. And there are these strong feelings of unity and connection, and also this connection to the world, to family, friends, and also what is reported a lot are very deeply profound insights that connect us to memories from our past, but also insights regarding what we might want to change in our lives. And we kind of re-enter from this state of consciousness into our like baseline consciousness and have this openness towards emotions, towards making new experiences. And we might be motivated to share this with friends and kind of implement this change into our lives. But what I've seen in my experience personally, but also in clinical research, is that people have these profound insights and then kind of go on with their day-to-day lives and aren't able to really fully integrate these experiences into their behavioral patterns. So there is still this inner teacher, but for example, patients from recent studies on 5-MeO-DMT or psilocybin, they come back to their familiar environment where they pick up on their normal behavioral patterns and like re-enter to these states previously experienced before they had their psychedelic experience. And also, when I say psychedelic experience in this talk, I think I want to also integrate a wider perspective on that because it's not only about psychedelics, so substance-induced states of altering our perception, but altered states of consciousness in general. May that be invoked by breath work or by meditation techniques, and there seems to be kind of this discrepancy because there are these deep insights, but at the same time, we lack the cultural and community-based awareness to really address these topics and thereby creating a form of social isolation for these people because they aren't able like to fully implement these insights and to also share them and have them be part of their lives and also be part of their communities, making this not only an individual transformative experience, but also transforming their community around themselves. So for me, it's kind of looking in this talk, which avenues we could take for having a more pragmatic framework for integrating these experiences and for making more use of these altered states and to give all of this a greater perspective than a singular moment or like eclipse of gathering knowledge and insights into oneself. And a short introduction to myself. I'm a psychology student living in Berlin. I'm writing my master thesis on the opinions of German mental health professionals on MDMA and MDMA assisted therapy, and also want to continue working in this field as a psychotherapist. That's why I'm also doing my psychotherapy education from next year onwards, to kind of also be able to accompany people in these journeys. So for me, it was also a personal, but also a work-related journey to kind of find out how we can cultivate these states of consciousness and how, as a society, we might make more use of them, also outside of therapy. But also alongside these modalities of therapy, of naturalistic settings of consuming psychedelics. And you also see my affiliations, so the organizations I'm kind of involved with. And to kind of embed like this theory of altered states of consciousness, I like the term coined by Thomas Metzinger, it's Bewusstseinskultur. So, a culture of consciousness. So, it's kind of a framework for understanding certain states of consciousness and trying to address the ever-evolving pace at which technologies are evolving and kind of our lack of interpreting these vast knowledges that we are gathering about our brains in studies on the neural mechanisms of our brains and trying to embed that into our, I don't know, understanding of the world. And the culture of consciousness is trying to navigate these ethical and societal challenges and changes that we are seeing in the world and to be kind of able to cultivate valuable states of consciousness. For example, Thomas Metzinger sees the state of meditation as a valuable state that we might integrate more into our lives. And for kind of this evaluation of what makes a state valuable, there is a certain ethics of consciousness, as was put by Metzinger. And there are three key dimensions. It's the minimization of suffering. So if we also talk about altered states of consciousness, these are also, for example, our consciousness is also altered by our emotions. So states of anger or fear are largely suppressed or then have kind of this explosion where like people get very worked up and don't have like a connection to their emotionality. And therefore, by not addressing these states of consciousness, we are kind of furthering the suffering that people have in their lives. And also another key dimension would be that we accumulate knowledge in kind of this evaluation of states of consciousness so that we can gather insights on like on ourselves, but also on the world around us and how we might engage with these altering states, but also in the relationships we have in our lives. And also, the culture of consciousness should kind of give us the opportunity of valuable states arising more often. So, us being able to foster these states of consciousness in our personal lives. But what is very important to myself, and what I kind of also want to mention here, is that I think what is important in this discussion of what is a valuable state of consciousness is that it's extremely individual and that we have to really avoid being dogmatic about these topics. So there is no institution, there is no organization telling us what we should think of as a valuable state of consciousness because, and as Mac John Barker puts it, when we're faced with such high levels of uncertainty, we tend to grab onto something for safety and hold it tight. And in the case of relationships, what we grab onto is rules. And that's kind of also what we see in our personal lives, because maybe meditation works for one person, but not for another person, or they're not able to integrate that into our lives. So we really should avoid being like a teacher to others and telling them what is valuable, and we should more find out what might be a compass pointing us in the right direction on where we want to go into in our own lives and what we for ourselves need to engage with the world surrounding us and ourselves. And for that, I kind of want to have an accessible framework, and I want to conjointly find out what this framework might be for embedding and evaluating these altered states of consciousness. Because I think as a society, we can't deny that there is a large value in kind of addressing these states, but also engaging with them and cultivating them. And to also add on to Metzinger's criteria, I think this framework has to be pragmatically and easily accessible to everyone, despite their educational background or um, their sociodemographic variables. And I think this meaningful change should be able to be sustained by each and every one and shouldn't be as an individual journey, but as a collective journey that doesn't only hold value, for example, for the psychedelic sphere, but for society in general. So I think it's important to kind of link the psychedelic experience also to other states of consciousness that arise in other techniques to kind of have a broad approach for society to have this compass to point them in a direction where we as a collective might be able to really foster change. And for this, I think the ideas of Erich Fromm are very interesting because what we see in our society right now, that there is a very strong mode of possession. He makes this, he distinguishes between the mode of having and the mode of being, where a lot of us, and me myself included, tie their identity to the accumulation. And this is not only of objects and wealth, of course, that's also a large issue in our society, but also the accumulation of social status. So being an accredited scientist and being very intellectual and holding a lot of knowledge. And he kind of puts this as an antithesis to the mode of presence, the mode of being, where identity is rooted in the connection we have to other people and also to ourselves, and the authenticity with which we kind of go in these interactions, and that this mode of presence is independent from ownership, from possession. And I think this closely relates to the state of being as we see it in the state of the psychedelic experience, where through the downregulation of the default mode network, behavioral patterns get disrupted. So we aren't able to, or we are able if we resist, but we get kind of this window of opportunity to to disrupt our usual patterns and also to relax our beliefs about the world because they aren't as deeply rooted in the ego. And we're much more able to spontaneously react to certain inputs. We're way more open to perceive the world in an unbiased way. And these feelings of connectedness are also the relational connection that is defined by Fromm through the state of being. So this visceral perceptiveness gives us kind of the openness to engage with the world in a different mode and to kind of leave behind this mode of ownership or the mode of possessing. And this is kind of an opportunity I see that also kind of is iterated in sociology, where Hartmut Rosa also puts it as or not the solution, but a proposal for kind of dealing with this accelerated world where we're constantly trying to engage with new concepts, with new ideas to perform better, to adapt quicker, and that we as a subject are in resonance with other people might be kind of the solution of de-accelerating the state by both affecting other people with our ideas, with our experiences, with these altered states of consciousness, and with being present, but also letting us be affected by these people. So this resonance can't be manufactured artificially. This has to arise in spontaneous connection with other people. So resonant relationships might be able to redefine a lot of core structures of our lives. But that means also we have to open up to the unpredictability of the world, that these paths are not rigidly defined, but we open ourselves up to very ambiguous states, and also that this transformation is mutual. So we also change in our encounter with the world. So it's kind of this thought of a voice and an answer. So we are being addressed by the world, by the people surrounding ourselves, but we're also having impact. So it's this reciprocal relationship. And to kind of give an example for this distinction also of having and being as defined by Fromm, and this state of being also closely relates to resonance by Hartmut Rosa is the mode of having is, for example, I had the deep realization during my trip that everything is connected. But then this experience kind of becomes like a mental object we own. Whereas in the mode of being, this journey of feeling connected to the world transcends into our daily lives. It becomes part of our reality, and we engage with other people in a different way. It's not something we only connect through in this altered state of consciousness, but that kind of becomes our baseline consciousness. So these insights become lived and they become part of our reality. And that's also seen in the language and how we share these experiences. So, for example, I want to tell you how profound my trip was, is trying to impress people and also isolates us in having this exclusive insight into the universe instead of sharing the experience and then having people engage with these experiences and sharing their experiences and it becoming a communal process where we are in dialogue with other people and are evolving mutually. And so I think these concepts might find value in our lives in kind of discovering our own dimensions of being and having and where this connects to in our lives and where we might be able to foster this presence in our daily lives and also to advocate for community exchange. So having an anti-hierarchical approach where we don't put ourselves above other people and are non-judgmental in our approach of like listening and going into exchanges and being having like humility towards these experiences, but also manage to have a transference from the psychedelic experience to seeing other motives in our lives and in our core reality. So I kind of want to ask all of you if we are able to find a new path in engaging with these ideas, in maybe how we all are able to broaden our view on consciousness and to not see it as these isolated events, to also foster this non-dogmatism. So to not be a teacher to others, but to always be in interaction and to be open to be touched by others, and how we can also create in our communities space for resonance where these lively interactions can happen and how these spaces might look like. And also kind of how the mode of being and being present allows us to maybe be a different or a more authentic version of ourselves that might make us, I don't know, more happy and transform society as we know it into something that's conjointly built up. So I think this is a huge opportunity, and I myself am very inspired by these writers, but I think we all have our part to contribute in this discourse, and it's a huge opportunity for change for all of us. So, yeah, thank you for engaging on this journey with me, and I hope you could take something from it. And I really look forward to discussing all of these ideas with you, and I'm also very open to um, seeing how your views might differ from mine. Yeah, thank you so much.